Hi, I'm Luke. We're here today for a special International Women's Day broadcast, and I'm here with three very successful ladies from DRPG. I'm here with Sascha, one of our project managers, Elaine, our head of learning, and Gemma, our campaign consultant. So, Gemma, I'll start with you first.
Beautiful.
Could you tell us a little bit about how you came to be at DRPG, your journey here?
Okay. I took a very unconventional route into starting a career. I quit my A-levels when I was 17, and my dad frog-marched me into the careers office and said, "You will get a job." So I got a job as an office junior in an office quite local to where I lived, and it turned out to be an advertising agency. So I went in, office junior, making the tea, going to the post office, photocopying, and basically worked my way up from there. So luckily within the Midlands, we've got lots of creative agencies, lots of really well-known agencies, some great brands. So I just took advantage of that fact, and here I am today.
Was it a very different setting for a woman back then in the working world?
Oh, absolutely. So most agencies around that time were very male-dominated. The first time I really noticed it was an issue for me is when I left to have my son in 2009. Going back to the workplace, there was very much a divide between what they felt I could do as a woman versus what I could do before having children. There was lots of comments as I'd leave the office on time in the evening, thanks for popping in, or don't give Gem that brief because, she's not going to be able to work on it in the evenings or weekends or whatever it was. Fast forward 9 years on from there, when I had my daughter, Martha, it was a very, very different place. It was much more accepting to be at the level that I was at that time in my career and to go back to a job after having children. I suppose what didn't help me is because I worked in the Midlands, a lot of the brands that I worked with were automotive brands, and they were quite male heavy in terms of clients, people that worked on the accounts, those sorts of things. So yeah, very, very different.
And Elaine, I know you can relate to some of Gemma's story there as well. So can you tell us a bit about how you came to DRPG, your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually one thing I do relate with that I didn't realise till we just started this was that I also ditched in my A-levels halfway through. So I left college halfway through, decided that formal education wasn't for me and I just wanted to get out in the world of work. And I actually worked for Co-op Insurance in their head office in Manchester. And then I moved down to the Midlands and I worked in travel agents for years and years. That was what I thought my career was. But then I realised that I quite liked developing people and seeing people excel and succeed and having a part in that. So I left there and went to work for BT, knowing that it would open up doors for me. And I started there as a team manager, but then moved into learning and development and worked there for 10.5 years. And then 6 months ago or so, decided that I wanted to come and work somewhere where people are valued for people with the best will in the world for an organisation like BT. They're a large corporate, so you lose that kind of really personal feeling of having an impact and knowing that you're doing something really great. So that's why I left to come here, so I could work somewhere where I really felt like I belonged, because that was the thing I've probably struggled with throughout my career to that point, was having that feeling of belonging for who I really am. So I had some challenges around being quite loud, especially being a northerner, so I'd have challenges around being that loud woman that was overconfident, and that was not seen in a good light. And then I had challenges similar to Gemma around having children, and then coming back from maternity leave as well, to fast forward to now and be somewhere where I truly feel like I belong as me, as a person, is just invaluable.
So changing attitudes to women and people as people along the way?
Definitely, yeah. I think attitudes towards working mums particularly is definitely changing, and it's definitely come a long way. And even for me personally, I've got Jessica who's nearly 10 and then Lydia who's nearly 6. But even in that kind of 3.5, 4 years between them, I found my experience much different. My skills coming back as a working mum after having my younger daughter felt much more valued than it was the first time round. And I think part of that is the management around me and their perception of the value that working mums can bring. But I think also some of it is my own confidence in knowing that No, I have a lot to give, and it doesn't matter that I only give it 3 days a week now, because the other days I'm looking after children. But I think when I had my first daughter, I needed someone else to give me that confidence and tell me, we value you, whereas the second time around I didn't need that.
In hindsight, if I had my time again with mine at young ages, I'd have pushed for more flexible working. So that might have looked like a 4-day week or shorter days. I feel like I was so driven to come back into a workplace and to pick up where I left off, but I wasn't the same person that I had been before I had my children. I felt very differently about things. I thought about things differently. My priorities had changed. I think as mums returning to work, we put so much pressure on ourselves to go back in and to fit right back into where we were, but we're not the same people. So we're starting off with an impossible task that we just can't follow through on. So, and I think that goes through most of my career. I've set myself up to fail at so many points that as an older as an older woman now, you know, confident with my skill set, confident with where I've reached in terms of my career, I just wish I could have gone back and told my younger self, don't worry so much about it. You know, everything will work out. Everything happens for a reason. Don't put yourself under too much pressure, because there are enough people around you that will put pressure on you.
Sascha, a bit of a different route for you to DRPG. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was a bit different for me in comparison to Gemma and Elaine. This is my first ever real job, if you like, and came straight into an apprenticeship, and I was surrounded by really inspirational women who really sort of took me under their wing and guided me along my journey, and also empowered me to be my best self. And I think without them, it would have been very different. But I've sort of had that reassurance and support from them on my journey. Equally, I don't think that being a woman affects how successful I've been in this role. I think it's my drive and determination to do well has put me in that position.
For me, it's really interesting to hear your experience and your journey so far, especially because, as I mentioned, I've got 2 children. My son Eddie is 14. My daughter Martha is 9. She is autistic and she has ADHD. So it's great for me to hear as a parent that there will be lots of different routes, not only now, but in the future for her to come into a workplace, whatever that might look like. And I know certainly from the apprentices we've had in campaign and across the rest of the business, as an organisation, we are very good and very forward thinking in terms of how we match those areas of the business with the apprentices at that time based purely on their personality. And for me, I think you're an inspiration in terms of your drive, your mindset, being the age that you are. And I think you've had some great support around you, but it's absolutely down to you and how you've embraced the challenge. And for me, that just makes me really hopeful that my little 9-year-old in 10 years' time is going to 100% not have the same experience myself or Elaine had. She won't have the same experience you had. Hopefully she'll have a different experience and a better experience, and she'll be seen for her skills, what she's good at, her whole personality, rather than just fitting her into a box in terms of what she should or shouldn't do.
Yeah.
I would absolutely second that. You know, as a mum of 2 young girls, they're my driving force behind having a career and trying to be the best that I can be. One of the reasons why I love working and learning, because I get the privilege of arranging apprenticeship. You know, we do a lot of work having connections with local colleges and local universities so that we can nurture like that next generation of people to come in. But for me personally as a mum, my girls are going to be managed, led by people like Sascha. So the fact that Sascha's having this great experience, that's going to carry through. So when my children come to the world of work, their experience is going to be so positive, and I think that's a really wonderful thing.
Do you feel a responsibility to nurture the talent now, like Sascha being here, to then set up a future?
Absolutely. And you know what? That doesn't just go for women, that's across the board, of course it is. But where we've come from, you know, decades ago with how women were perceived in terms of having careers to where we're at now, there's massive advancements. We have to keep going with it. It's a massive driving force. I will continue to make sure that we're utilising our women, that we're making sure they've got the same opportunities to development as everyone else, that they're getting opportunity through apprenticeships or graduates, so that we can keep going with all of that hard work that's been put in over the last 5 to 10 years predominantly. I think it's really come along in that time.
Let's talk about some of the misconceptions. You touched on it there, but both being parents, Do you feel you've faced any, misconceptions along the way that you can't be a parent and have a successful career?
I think you could open up a can of worms, and me and Gemma could probably go on for the next hour about different things. There's an expectation, and Gemma touched on this, there's an expectation that you'll come back from mat leave and you'll just slot right back into where you left, and that's really unreasonable, and you put yourself under that pressure to do just that. But now there's also this expectation that you'll just be this wonderful mum as well, and you've somehow got to do both simultaneously, and of course you do. I felt, especially when I came back to work part-time, that I wasn't giving my all to work and I wasn't giving my all to home as well. Women are still primary caregivers for their children on the whole. They still are. Not so much as they used to be. There's obviously a much bigger, I hate the word acceptance, but there is a bigger acceptance of women having careers now, of course there is. But there is still this idea that women will do the primary caring. So I'll have instances where, say, it's school holidays, and somebody will say to me, oh, who's got your children while you're at work? Well, their dad has, because I'm not their only parent. I went away at the weekend and popped to the toilets and reflected on the fact that the female toilets had a baby changing facility, but the male toilets didn't. So although we've come a long way, there is still this kind of underlying idea that women will look after the children and that you can't really have it all. Then the flip side of that is that now we hear a lot, women can have it all nowadays.
I don't want it all.
This is the thing. Sometimes women don't want it all. Sometimes I want the bare minimum, a glass of wine and my feet up on the sofa. I don't want it all. But the point is that they can. And I think now, I don't know about you, Gemma, I don't know whether there's this social expectation that's going the other way. That if you're a stay-at-home mum, that you're not quite doing everything you should as a woman because you should be having a career now. I don't know if it's gone a little bit far.
I think in all of that, we fail to see the individual, we fail to see the person at the centre of all of that. And just because you've had children doesn't mean that you no longer want a career or you no longer want to, have interests outside of your family. And that doesn't make you a bad person for wanting to be those things and wanting to still be your authentic self. Me and my husband have been together 20 years and we always joke that, when the kids have grown up and they've left home, although Martha might never go, who knows. But, when they've gone, we still want to have interesting things to talk to each other about. When we're sat on, Brighton Pier, when we're both 80, sat in our little wheelchairs with our blankets over our laps, we still want to have had the types of lives that mean we can still have conversations. And if that means that for me to feel at my most fulfilled, I work, I'm a parent, I'm a wife, I've got friends, I've got interests away from the family home completely, then that's fine, and I'm happy with that. It just means that I set up those expectations with those people around me differently. I don't say I'm going to give 100% to work or I'm going to give 100% to my family. But it's interesting, we were talking about this last week, and success looks very different for different people. So for a long time in my 20s and 30s, because I'd left the workplace to have children, I measured my success by my job title and my salary. I couldn't care less anymore. My success now is how happy do I feel in my day-to-day life? How happy and fulfilled am I at work? Am I challenged enough? How happy and fulfilled am I at home? Am I growing those relationships with my kids? Do I even want to have a relationship with my kids? Some days, no, probably not. Have I still got the interests that I had when I was younger? To go away and do different things that are just for me, and it's the perception. Am I selfish because I'm a mum and I'm an employee, but I still want to go off and do something for myself? And I think with age comes a level of just not caring anymore what other people think. You've got to remove some of that and just think, I'm okay, I'm happy with my life, therefore I feel successful in my life. And if people don't like it, they don't like it.
Do you feel the pressures of that, having to be a woman boss or a CEO or achieving all these different things? Do you feel those pressures at all?
But probably, to some extent. I want to be successful, but like Gemma says, that's measured in different ways. And I'm probably still on that learning journey to know what my success looks like. But at the moment, it's achieving those career goals, giving back to my team at work and helping them on their development journey as well.
Do you think, Gem, that success actually then is balance within life?
Yeah. And whether that's, family life and a career, or family life and your friendships, or whatever it might be, it doesn't have to involve a career. Basically, whatever works for that individual. Don't conform to be what people expect you to be, but just keep it balanced.
So the reason we're all here is, of course, International Women's Day. Now, it begs the question, should it just be one day, or should we be celebrating women every single day?
I think we should be celebrating women every single day. What that looks like will vary to different people. And I think for me, it's not about just celebrating women, it's celebrating people. The challenge in terms of being a woman is that traditionally they've had to work much harder than men have to get to the same point. So for me, it's about, if our tendencies are more aimed at prioritising or favouritising men for whatever reason, we need to just be intentional and make sure that we're not slipping back into those tendencies. So that is things like giving them the opportunities to work on the really exciting projects. Don't assume that because that there's a woman that maybe works part-time, that they can't do a brilliant job that the man could do. There is also a little bit of work to do around all of those misconceptions and things like we assume that women will have babies and then they'll come back and they'll probably work part-time, and that might not be the case, and actually you might have men in your teams or in your organisations that also want to work part-time. So on one hand, no, it shouldn't be a day, but I think that the day is needed to just keep that focus going.
So the conversation really should be around how can we be better people rather than how can we, bridge the gap or, quash gender inequality. It should be how can we be better people, first and foremost.
Yeah, it's the equality thing, isn't it? It's just making sure that we're still working towards, because, we shouldn't be blinkered here. Things are still not equal.
No.
The reality is it's still not equal. So whilst we might have some positive stories to tell about how it was versus how it is, it's still not equal, and we need to remember that, and I think this day helps that.
Yeah, and in terms of, the support that we get within organisations now, 25 years ago when I started out in my career, support was, being able to have a sick day or getting my bus pass paid for me. If fast forward 25 years, the support we get now is unbelievable. So we've got things like, the mental health first aiders. There's a lot of mental health illnesses and issues that we are aware of, not only here at our organisation, but just wider and socially. And for me personally, within the last 12 to 18 months, I've started to realise that I'm perimenopausal. And that is a conversation that I never, ever thought I would have within a workplace. I didn't even know how to start having that conversation or who to have it with. But again, because it is so accepted to talk about things that are affecting us as people, as work colleagues, it's easier to have those conversations and to weave them into the day-to-day narrative. So for me, my team is pretty much a fair split of men and women. But the men are equally interested to understand how menopause affects women because they're our colleagues, they're our friends. They want to understand how we're feeling, how it's impacting us. And I think similar to what Elaine was saying about, women coming back after having children, don't make a judgment, don't assume that they're going to be, wanting to work part-time or their brain's going to be switched off. It's the same now. So I've gone from experiencing that having children to now experiencing it as a perimenopausal woman. Those symptoms are hindering my day-to-day job, but I'm really lucky in that I've got a really supportive team around me. And also, because I am who I am, I've been very open and I've had those conversations, which has enabled me to take help from people around me and to realise what my strengths and weaknesses are and how to use them best when I'm not having a good day or something's just not gelling on that particular day.
So advice for women in particular listening, 3 very confident women in yourselves. How can somebody tap into that inner confidence?
It's hard because, we've talked about it, some of it does come with age.
Yeah, experience.
That feeling of, I know I'm not particularly fussed about what people think anymore, like I would have been during my 20s.
Yeah.
I do think it helps with the people that you've got around you as well. I know you've had people kind of, in your corner supporting you, and you've said as well that you've had all these inspirational women around you to support you, and it's about being there for each other. Because as you were just saying then about your situation, I did kind of reflect on what would that be like if you didn't have the confidence to speak up and you didn't have the support around you.
I would probably have left my role because I had complete and utter imposter syndrome like I haven't had for over 20 years. And I would have left my role. I would have walked out of here with my head down, just feeling like I can't do my job, I don't recognise myself anymore. But luckily there were people around me who remembered me before this and were there just to pick me up. And I think as women, we do that quite naturally with each other. You know, you might say to somebody, oh, that dress looks fantastic on you, or you look really great, or your hair looks lovely. You know, those sorts of comments cost absolutely nothing. They're just a random act of kindness. But in the moment, they mean so much, and they can really lift you out of what is quite a negative space and put you in a much more positive mindset. And I think I get so much out of my colleagues at work because I've invested the time in getting to know them, and they know me and all of my little quirks, and, you know, me being quite assertive and certainly coming across as very confident. But also they know when I'm not feeling so confident. They know when I'm putting on a little bit of a mask just to be able to get through and do what I need to do.
And I think with that as well, it's okay to have those days when you're not feeling confident. Like, by no means are we always, every single day, you know, feeling amazing and like totally like we own the world, run the world. But it's important to have those days and to reflect and to sort of bring yourself back to earth in a way, and just remember your capabilities as well. Know that you are capable of doing something, which just instills that confidence.
I really like the idea of you don't always have to have it together. I've personally struggled over the years with being emotional and seeing that as a negative. You get quite emotional in situations, and then as I've kind of become a fully fledged adult, I realised that actually I would see that as one of my super skills. Yeah. That I've got a high level of emotional intelligence, that I'm confident enough to display my emotions, and that's not a negative thing.
It's not a weakness.
I do wonder whether there is still a little bit of a stigma attached to that, though, for women to show their emotions, or whether they might be seen as weak. I think that might have a little bit of a way to go still.
I think on the flip side, I think I'm a very emotional man as well, and I display those emotions, as you'll know, Jem.
Yeah.
But men can be seen as aggressive, or angry, frustrated, wound up. So I think that goes both ways, interestingly.
Definitely, and it goes back to that point about it being about people and treating everyone as human beings with thoughts and feelings and emotions and strengths and areas of, you know, opportunity to develop further, and everyone's the same regardless of whether that, you know, that's a man or a woman. And I think there is still that little bit of a stigma between emotional women being seen as weak still. I still think that's got a bit of a way to go, personally.
It's because it's so easy though, isn't it, to label us as that.
So we know there's still a lot of work to be done, but there has been some progress. So I wanted to ask each one of you about some positives that you've experienced within your working life as a woman.
Till September 2021, I was head of campaign here at DRPG, so I reported into a director, and at that point I felt like I'd done it. You know, I'd reached that level that I'd always wanted to get to. It felt really, really good. And then over the course of 12 months or so, the job itself just became too overwhelming for me, and I felt like I had complete and utter imposter syndrome. I felt like I was either letting people down at work or letting my family down at home. I was all prepared to step away. I was too ashamed to take a step down, so I thought the easiest solution here is just for me to leave. I'm very lucky that I've got a great relationship with my director. She is the only woman that I've ever worked for, and it's been an experience, but it's been a good experience. And we sat down and we had a conversation, and I just said, I'm feeling like this. I don't feel like I'm adding any value here. I don't feel like I'm benefiting the team. I feel like my family are certainly missing out. We sat down and we had an honest conversation, and she actually instigated looking at my skill set and what I was good at, which at the time I was in such a dark place, I wouldn't have said I was any good at doing anything. But she took me through that process. And she came up with all of these skills that I had that I'd just lost sight of. And she created a new role for me here at DRPG. So the role of campaign consultant was created for me, which focuses on all of my skills. And even then it was quite hard to accept that that's what I could do, because I was still just full of, I've been head of campaign. If I stay here, everybody's going to realise that I've stepped down from the role, and how am I going to be perceived internally? So there were some demons that I had to put to rest there, but it worked. It's still working now. We have regular conversations about how everything's going. My job spec has been a little bit fluid since then. So as my confidence has started to come back, because it's been enabled to come back, I've taken on different types of work or different types of pitches or whatever it might be. And I also realise now through lots of assessments that I was perimenopausal at that time. I was just full of emotion, complete brain fog, full of anxiety. And I wasn't recognising any of that. All I was seeing was I failed. And I hadn't failed. I was still the same person. I was just having a challenging time. And in fight or flight mode, I was just going to walk and leave all the work that I'd done here behind me. But luckily, I had a very inspirational lady looking out for me and working with me, and she made it possible for me to stay, and it's worked out really, really well.
So again, surrounding yourself with positive people, a good group of people. Elaine, can you think of
I love that story.
A positive?
I really like that story.
I'm amazed I didn't cry then. I could feel it coming.
I love that what it highlights is that one person can just see something in someone and make such a difference to them. The story that jumps out in my head for me personally was during my last role at BT, when I was working for the EE retail team. So that team had a phenomenal leader, and she really championed women and working mums. And that core project team was all consisted of 4 part-time working mums, so 2 job sharing one role, 2 job sharing the other role. Now,
that's unheard of.
Most people would have shied away from that, thinking, never going to work, can't afford part-time. It'd be absolute chaos, people in, people out. But it really worked, and it worked because she made sure it worked, because she championed us. She encouraged us to work together in the best way to get the best out of the time. And those 3 other ladies and myself worked brilliantly together, absolutely brilliantly together. What we achieved during that space of time was phenomenal. The programme we were working on went on to win an award. And like you said, that was quite unheard of, and it's still quite unheard of. But that happened because of the belief from one leader going, no, we make this happen.
I think
this can work.
That's another good example of seeing the individual rather than seeing the potential problems in what you're doing or how you're doing it. It's seeing the individuals and the strengths and the skill sets they've got. That's the success.
Absolutely,
isn't it?
Absolutely. And that would be kind of my call to action for any leaders is, don't assume you need a person that fits in a box nice and neatly 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, because that might not be the case. It may be for some roles, but just consider it, because the value that you can get out of that and the extra skills that you will bring and the diversity of thought from lots of different people, rather than having one person in a job. You've got 2 people that have got different thoughts and perspectives and can bounce off each other in a role. There's so much value to that. So don't necessarily jump to the conclusion that our role needs to be full-time, because a part-time job share may work just as well, if not better.
And again, that's why I'm hopeful for my Martha when she reaches that age, that if we've got that mindset, it's about who's right for that job, who's got the right skill set, rather than who ticks the boxes and fits in, then I'm hopeful for her.
Sascha, a massive positive for yourself. You're recently a winner of an award. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I've recently been awarded CN 30 under 30, which is an industry award recognising young talent in the industry. So that's just been a huge achievement for me, and something that it just shows what you can achieve after you put that sort of hard work in. Another thing I would mention as well is the Next Gen board, which DRPG recently launched, and having that influence at that level as a woman in the industry is huge. And I think there's that perception that, a boardroom might look like quite male dominated and not necessarily have that diversity there. So to be able to give some input and some of my thoughts and opinions at that platform and at that level is great.
Is it important that you're giving a woman's perspective, or would you rather it just be seen that you're giving a perspective?
Just a perspective. We're all human, we're all just people that have got a lot to give, so I don't think that it needs to be branded as that at all.
So as we've touched on, positives, some things to be worked on also. There's this famous interview, I don't know if you guys have seen it, with Morgan Freeman, where he's actually asked about how to end racism, and he answers, stop talking about it. Is it the same thing with gender inequality?
I think potentially, yes. As leaders, I think that's what it is. We don't have to put badges on everything and say, we're diverse, we're inclusive. It's just as a leader or someone who's in a position to influence, do we have a mix of perspectives? Gender just being one of those, because there's lots of other mix of perspectives that we should have. And if you don't, then do something about it. Balance it out. If you do, then absolutely great. And I don't think we necessarily need to shout about it, but you need to be mindful of it and making sure that you've got that diversity of thought from a range of people. For
somebody who wants that, who wants to start having these conversations, but is worried perhaps about being seen as an activist or a feminist or whatever else, hashtag woke, whatever you want to call it. What would your advice be? How can you feel more comfortable with having those conversations? What can we do to help those people?
I think be authentic. But one of the hardest things you can do is try and use somebody else's words in your voice. So be authentic. If it comes from something that you think or you feel, it is always going to be more authentic than just a viewpoint that you've taken on because you've heard somebody else say it or use it or whatever it might be.
So moving forward from that, if we're having more of these conversations, is the onus also on leaders to help develop and progress attitudes towards women?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's similar to what I said just now around just creating those equal opportunities, whatever that looks like, whether that's role progression, next gen board participation, development opportunities, doing the exciting projects, whatever that looks like.
I hate to use this phrase because it's used on Love Island all the time, but back yourself, absolutely back yourself, because whilst you might not always feel that confident, I get it all the time when I go into pitches. The team will watch the pitches afterwards or they'll be in the room and they'll say to me, "Oh, Gem, you come across as so confident." And I say 9 times out of 10, it's not even what you know, it's how you deliver it. If you deliver something in a confident manner, if you're sure of what you're saying and you speak with conviction, that's what lands, that's what people remember. So I think back yourself, even if you have those moments, and like Sascha was saying earlier, where you might not always be feeling like you've got your positive pants on every day, or you're feeling like, today's going to be a great day. Just try and back yourself as much as you can. And I think as women as well, we can be very good at backing each other and lifting each other up. But also, don't get me wrong, women can be the complete opposite, and we can be very competitive between certainly with each other. And sometimes women can be more damaging to other women than men can be, because I think we set ourselves up almost with, challenges that we're never going to achieve. But then we're all eyes on and we're all watching each other, especially within a professional environment.
I want to ask quite a, tricky question in a way. If gender equality is mandated, so, for example, the gender pay gap, if that's closed and, people are forced into gender equality, are we missing the point?
I think you would get to the end result of equality, but how people would communicate with each other, how they would work well together, etc., would potentially cause some conflict. I hate the word mandate coming from a learning background, I hate the word mandate. As soon as you whack that on something, you've lost everyone. And what we want people to do is be truly along for the ride and believe in what, in what things like International Women's Day is talking about and what we're talking about when it comes to inclusion and equality. We want people to genuinely be along for that and not doing it because they've been made to.
It's like enforced fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the worst.
You will be inclusive, you will be equal. Yeah, it doesn't quite have the same impact. Because for me, it's all about the reasons. And when we're talking about how you have that conversation to bring things up and being concerned with seeming like, on a bit of a feminist march, banging the pitchforks kind of vibe. I think the big thing is about having the right intentions. And if you're clear on what the intention is and what the objective is of what you're about to have a conversation about, that's how you get to where you need to be, and that's how you have that impact that you talked about, because the intentions are clear and the outcome is clear. If we mandate something, then it's not your intention anymore.
It's not
somebody
authentic.
Somebody else's intention that you're being forced to go along with. You need to feel it yourself, otherwise you lose all that authenticity.
I can't thank you all enough for joining me. I wanted to finish on asking you each a question. That being, what's one thing that you really love about yourself? I'll start with you, Gem.
Oh, geez. I love and I hate this thing, if that's okay. I love that I make myself available for anybody or everybody that needs to talk about whatever it might be, work, family life, whatever. But I also hate that because sometimes I'm a person, I've got real emotions, and I can never just switch off and not think about something that I've spoken to somebody about. And then sometimes that has an impact on what I need to be thinking about, perhaps for me or my family or whatever I've got going on as Gem. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
It's a weird thing to do, isn't it, to sit and go, I'm so wonderful at such and such. I think, I would say, in my mind, I would reframe it as what I'm proud of, because that's easier for me. And I'm proud that in terms of juggling mum life, career life, I think I'm nailing it. Now, if you'd have asked me that maybe 3-4 years ago, that would not have been my answer. But right now, I feel like I am nailing having a career, and I'm really fortunate with the work that I do, that I get to influence other people around me to have success, to whatever that looks like, to everyone's point that's different, that I get to help and support that and influence that. I'm really fortunate, and I feel like I'm doing a good job of that. I feel like I'm also doing a really good job of bringing up 2 young girls and showing them that if what you want is that juggle between mum life, career, because again, it's really important to not assume that that's what every woman wants. But that is what I want, and that to my children, if that's what you also want in life, whatever job you want to do, I did mention this to my youngest the other day, and I said, you can be anything you want to be, anything you want to do in life. It's completely up to you.
What answer did you
say, can I just make TikTok videos? Like, you can make if that's what you want to do, you can make TikTok videws. She says, can I stop going to school? No, you can't stop going to school. But you can make TikTok videos. Actually, I look forward to the early retirement when she's gone viral. When she's gone viral and making an absolute fortune. But I'm quite proud of myself that I feel like I am nailing that at the minute. They know that mum isn't all about work. Work know that I'm not all about, there's a good balance between the 2 sides of me, and at the minute, juggling it fairly well. Hopefully setting a good example for my children.
Good answer, lady.
Thank you.
Yeah, so again, linking it to probably what I'm most proud of, and it's like my passion for what I'm doing and the impact I'm having. And I just want to keep taking that forward and growing in that area, and just always being able to give back. That's where my passion really lies. I want to be able to give back to people that have supported me, and give back to people that are maybe on their now development journey and on the same route I was. It's just having that impact and really
Passing it on.
Passing it on for sure.
Thank you all so much for joining me. Really do appreciate your time.